Hey guys! Yesterday in our book Kirby, McCook, and the Jesus Chronicles, we read the chapters where Jesus was crucified and buried. Chapter 49 is Jesus Truly Lives. Well, Zuri Claire just sent me a note. It said, "You and I are really good friends, Kirby. Have a great day." And then she wrote her name and 5 smiley faces beside it. 5 smiley faces! I wrote a note in return and sent it right back. The note said, I think I like that. I like it a lot, Kirby, with my name and 5 smiley faces of my own. Zuri Claire read the note just now and she looked up and gave me a grin. And I gave her a grin right back. Friends. Yeah, that's what we'll be. Oh boy, what a relief. When you're 12, being friends is so much stinking better than dating. Early Sunday morning, as the day was dawning, 2 men, both named Mary, and their friend Salome went to visit the tomb. They'd purchased burial spices, and they wanted to put them on Jesus' body. On the way, they asked each other, "How are we going to roll the stone away?" But when they got to the tomb, the stone was pushed aside. They walked inside the tomb and saw a young man there, clothed in a white robe. His face shone like lightning, and his clothes were brilliantly white as snow on a sunshiny day. The women were all like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what?" The young man, actually an angel, said, "Don't be scared. You're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He's risen from the dead." Mary Magdalene ran and found Peter the rock and John, son of thunder, and they all ran to the tomb. John ran faster than Peter and got there first and saw the empty grave clothes. Peter got there and saw the same thing. Eventually they left, but Mary still stood at the tomb crying. She couldn't take it all in what was happening. As she turned to leave, someone standing nearby asked, "Dear woman, why are you crying?" At first, Mary thought he was a gardener. She said, "Sir, if you've taken him away, tell me where you've put him, and I'll go get him." The gardener just said one word, "Mary." She recognized him and then exclaimed, "Teacher!" "Don't hug me just yet," Jesus said. "Go find my brothers and tell them that I'm soon ascending to God my Father and your Father too." She ran to find the disciples and told them, "I've seen the Lord." Some soldiers who'd guarded the tomb went into the city and told the uppity leaders the body was gone. Mighty worried, they called a meeting and decided to tell people that Jesus' body had been stolen. Then they paid the soldiers to keep their mouths shut. That same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were walking in the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked, they talked about everything that had happened. Suddenly, they noticed another man walking with them. It was Jesus, but God prevented them from recognizing him at first. The man asked, "What are you guys talking about?" Both followers were really sad. One said, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who doesn't know what's going on." "Humor me," Jesus said. So they told him. Jesus said, "All these things that have happened were predicted by the prophets." And Jesus started from the beginning of scriptures and took them through the writings of Moses and all of the prophets, explaining things about himself. As they neared Emmaus, the 2 disciples asked Jesus to stay with them. So they went in for supper. Jesus blessed the food, and suddenly their eyes were open and they recognized him. "Jesus!" At that very moment, he disappeared. The 2 disciples raced back to Jerusalem to tell the others. It was Sunday evening, and the other disciples were meeting in a locked room because they were afraid. Maybe they'd be arrested next. Suddenly, Jesus stood there with them. "Don't worry," he said, "it's me." He showed them his wounds in his hands and side, and they were all filled with joy. Jesus asked, "Did you have anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he ate it. Then he said, "Peace be with you. The Father has sent me, and I'm sending you," he said. "Stay here in the city until the Holy Spirit comes and fills you with the power from heaven." Wow, what will happen next? We'll find out next week. Kirby's notes stick inside your brain. These are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life by the power of his name. John 20:31. Want to read more? Check out Matthew 28, 1 through 15, Mark 16, Luke 24, 1 through 49, and John 20, 1 through 20. Chapter 50. Jesus heads for home. Noah came into the classroom today rubbing his hands together. "Okay, Kirby McCook, what happens next? Give us another bucket of awesome sauce." "You got it," I answered, and I opened my Bible. Thomas wasn't there when Jesus walked into the locked room, and 10 jaws dropped. Later, the other disciples told him, "Jesus is alive." But Thomas said, "Nope, I won't believe it, not unless I see for myself." So forever after, he was known as Doubting Thomas, which must have looked silly on the back of his football jersey. 8 days later, the disciples were together again, including Doubting Thomas. The doors were still locked, and suddenly, just like before, Jesus stood among them. "Peace be with you," he said. Then he looked at Thomas and added, "Look at my hands. Go ahead. Touch the wounds in my side. Believe." Thomas said, "My Lord and my God," and probably fell on his knees in front of Jesus. Jesus said, "Thomas, you believe because you've seen me, but it's also really good for people to believe without seeing me." The disciples didn't really know what to do after that, so they went back to fishing in the Sea of Galilee. They took their boat out and fished all night. They fished and fished and fished, but they didn't catch anything. At sunrise, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who it was. Jesus called, "Friends, how's that working out for you? Did you catch anything?" Nope, they said, "but you should have seen the one that got away." "Try throwing your net on the right side of the boat," Jesus called from shore. Now these guys were experienced fishermen. They'd tried everything they could think of. You could almost hear their mutterings. "Oh, the right side. Of course. Why didn't we think of that?" But they threw their net on the right anyway. Immediately the fish started showing up like crazy. So many fish jumped into their nets that they couldn't haul them into the boat. John said, "It's Jesus." And the message was clear. Jesus knew where the fish were. Jesus knew how life worked. Jesus knew what his followers should do, not just how to fish, but how to live. That's when Peter got a clue. He jumped into the water and swam for shore while the others wrestled the nets and brought the boat and fish to land. They counted 153 big ones. When they got to shore, the disciples found a cheery bonfire waiting and Jesus barbecuing fish and making toast. "Come and have breakfast," he said, grinning at their stunned faces. That was all good, but one guy still needed a special face-to-face with Jesus, Peter, the rock, who denied not Christ 3 times. After breakfast, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me more than these?" He might have been talking about the other disciples, or maybe the fish. Either way, it's cool that Jesus didn't say to Peter. Jesus didn't say, "You're lame. You denied me 3 times. What are you talking about, doofus?" Nope, no scolding. That's pretty cool grace right there. "Sure, Jesus," Peter said. "I love you. You know that." They talked some more and all was forgiven. Altogether, after Jesus came back to life from being full-on dead, he was seen by more than 500 people. Later, the 11 remaining disciples met up with Jesus on a mountain. They hung on his every word, maybe because they had a hunch that these were the last words Jesus would speak during his first coming on the earth. "I've been given all authority in heaven and on earth, so go and tell people in every country on the earth about me and my good news, so that they can become disciples too. Baptize people in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all of the commands I've given you, and be sure of this, I'm with you always, even in the end of time." When Jesus finished talking with them, he just went up straight into heaven. There he sat down at the place of honor with God the Father's right hand. The disciples stared into the clouds, probably with their mouths hanging wide open. Then 2 white-robed men suddenly appeared and said, "Don't just stand here staring. Jesus went to heaven. He'll return someday just the same way he did." "Oh," the disciples said, "Okay." And they headed back to Jerusalem, taking the first steps to obey Jesus' last instructions. You might think that it's the end of Jesus' story, but it's not, as we'll soon see. Remember, Jesus truly died and then truly came alive, and he keeps on living today. See you later, all you silly alligators. Kirby's notes stick inside your brain. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all of the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Matthew 28:19 through 20. Want to read more? Read Matthew 28:16 through 20, Luke 24 through 52, 50 through 52, John 20:24 through 21 and 25, and Acts 1:7 through 11. We'll see what happens tomorrow.